At them briefly in a little bit more detail. The livability criteria focuses on access to amenities and services for future residents if housing was developed on those sites. For example, our transit services within a half-mile of the site. The economic feasibility criteria looked at the feasibility of developing a lower income housing. For example, operational cost efficiencies, is there a potential to develop at least 25 units on that site? And that was something that we heard from our nonprofit housing providers. The geographic equity criteria was highlighted in all of the workshops. We heard that frequently. That folks really wanted to see our lower income housing distributed throughout the county, that it not be concentrated in one area, one community, and so this criteria focuses on that. Finally, the environmental constraints criteria is consistent with our countywide plan, looks at what existing environmental constraints are documented on that site. And our site recommendation for our market rate housing includes Paradise Drive, 43 units on Paradise Drive. And again, this is for the market rate housing. We looked at some likelihood, something that indicated that there was some development moving forward on that site. 12 Cameron Lane, we included 3 units based on prior entitlements. 1970 Indian Valley Road, 5, and 100 Marinwood Avenue. We have 10 above moderate income units, as well as 9 second units. You'll notice that we have second units included in all of our income categories, and consistent with state housing element legislation, you're allowed to count up to 25% of your lower income housing units using second units. And we did a survey that looked at the affordability, and consistent with that survey and the number of units that we anticipate will be developed over the next 8-year cycle, we're including the maximum number that could be included in our lower income, the 21 units of second units. We did a survey looking at affordability in 2012 and an update of that this summer, and those numbers are reflected in the affordability of our second units. Moving on to our moderate income housing. Again, this is for that looked at sites that were smaller infill sites. We have 150 Shoreline Highway, 217 Shoreline with 3 units, 217 Shoreline Highway with 10 units, 2400 Sir Francis Drake with 10, and Incorporated Fairfax with 10, and 204 Flamingo Road in the Valley with 10 units. And we received a number of comments around these sites, so I just want to briefly touch on that. Again, these are for moderate income, and this would be market rate rentals or condos that would be likely to be affordable to folks in the moderate income range. We're looking at people between 63 and 115,000. And these sites are not proposed based on the assumptions in the current inventory. They are proposed for densities between 5.3 units an acre and 12.6. So not high density housing. For the lower income housing, we're proposing 40 units on Seminary Drive property, 72 units at 100 Marinwood Avenue, and 40 units at Woodland at Auburn, and then, as I discussed, 21 units of 21 second units. Looking at the 3 proposed lower income sites in a little bit more detail, we have the Seminary Drive property that you're all familiar with. It's in the unincorporated Strawberry community, Mill Valley, and we're suggesting a portion of the larger site. It's partially developed. The countywide 21 land use designation is multifamily too. The zoning is RMP and the affordable housing combined district, which allows up to 60 units of affordable housing development on 2 acres of that larger site. The second site that we have is 100 Marinwood Avenue. It's a 4.7 acre site. It's underutilized mall with a grocery, which is currently in the center of the site. Right there is where the current grocery store is. There's a current application for a development proposal for 72 lower income units that's here on the southern end of the site. 10 market rate homes and some commercial is proposed here on the northern end of the site. It's general commercial and housing overlay designation in the countywide plan, and the zoning is planned commercial, 30 units an acre. The final site is Woodland at Auburn, 1.82 acre vacant, disturbed parking lot in central San Rafael. It's near services and transit access. The countywide plan is multifamily 2 and a housing overlay designation that allows up to 50 units. Our site assumption is for 40 units. So all of the lower income units or sites that we proposed currently have a default density or have a density of 30 units an acre, which is consistent with the county's current default density that's required to show feasibility for lower income units in the unincorporated part of the county. However, there is pending legislation that proposes to change that to 20 units an acre. And if that is passed and signed by the governor, it would go into effect by January 1st, 2015. Another way of establishing a lower density, lower than the default density that's currently established for the county, is through a feasibility analysis. And as you may know, Novato, last planning period, submitted a feasibility analysis and was granted a lower, and was approved with a lower density by the state. So the county may consider including a feasibility analysis in the 2015 to 23 housing element if the legislation is not passed. Just briefly to touch on the programs that we're proposing, and we can get into these more in detail if they're time permitting. We're proposing a number of new programs. The first 3 of them are carried forward from the 2009 housing element. The commission at that time had recommended including those in the housing element, and they were submitted in the 2009 draft for the state's review. When the staff came back with the 2012 housing element, we recommended removing a number of sites, or a number of programs, excuse me, because of time constraints and resources since we were so late in the planning period. And these 3 these 3 programs were included on that list. The other programs, the other new programs are included based on recommendations to address the constraints and barriers that were identified in the housing element. And then finally, staff is recommending looking at the housing overlay designation and evaluating its effectiveness. The program on requiring multifamily housing on multifamily zone sites has generated some interest in our public comment that we received over the last couple of days. And this is an analysis that we did in 2009 when the commission considered this program previously, just looking at how many sites would be effective, a little bit of detail on that. But really the intent of the program was saying that the multifamily zoning in the county there's a limited number of sites. And so this program looked at preserving those limited number of multifamily sites to allow some multifamily housing on them. Our recommendation is to conduct a public hearing, consider public comment, provide feedback on housing sites and programs, to straw vote on sites to include in the draft housing element, and to continue the hearing to August 25th. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, are there questions from commissioners to staff? Commissioner. Commissioner Holland.
I had a couple. point. On page 4, I guess this is a typo issue. In the third paragraph, the read starts to address. In the middle, it says the first 3 sites listed in table 2 have been identified to meet moderate income housing needs. Well, the first 3 sites only add up to 51, and the need is 61. So they're just not quite correct. You're getting the other sites.
You're right, wait, that's just a typo.
And you're getting the other sites down below.
Correct.
From Marinwood.
Correct. It should read the first 3 sites and the Marinwood.
I think I'm going to let the rest of these go to the discussion.
Okay. You want to say that? Commissioner Erickson, did you have questions?
Yeah. So, in terms of, it's related to what Commissioner Holland was asking on page, first of all, the page 5 of 14, we have the geographic equity criteria, the questions. I understand what you want to say, but I think that would need more clarification in terms of like, is the site within 1 mile of the housing element, other housing element sites, and then clarify that if it is within 1 mile, that's the not good site, you know? So, only clarifying, that's not a question actually, it's only, but page 4 of 14, I have a question for 4 of 14 and compared to page 6 of 14 with table 2. On the 4, you have the 9 sites evaluated to accommodate lower income housing needed included. And then you list the Fairfax one, 2,400, and it's described as lower income, and on table 2, you have the site as moderate income.
So these, the list on page 4 shows all the sites that we rated and compared using our evaluation criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of these sites, we selected the sites that are recommended on page 6. So some of those were recommended for lower income. And the one that you're noting, 2,400 Francis Drake, was not recommended for lower income. Instead, it was recommended for moderate income.
So it's reading moderate. One more question for now, and then. So, based on feedback we received in terms of emails from Tam Junction, and again, based on the previous housing element, I voiced my concern about the flooding issue with that site or that location. But I see that in terms of adding up for the required moderate income units, we are short in, like we as a county, if we take, for example, 10 units, I don't see where we could get the other 10, another site. So my question is, let's imagine that we will take 10, for example, the Armstrong site out. Let's say that we decide to do that. Where do we get the other 10 units? What would be your suggestion?
Well, the staff recommendation is this one in table 2. Using this criteria that we use, there isn't another alternative to make up those 10 units. We'd have to look at some other criteria and different ways of accommodating our moderate income housing.
Oh. I'll stop now.
Commissioner Holland?
This, again, I'm on page 12 in the staff report, and you're talking about the amendment, the change to figure 3.3. And it says that you want to amend the figure to reflect that the 658 total is inclusive of density bonus units. And then you do that by deleting the words, including density bonus units. So I don't understand how you make it say it is by deleting the words.
So if you look at the bottom of that table, under where it says total of 658, it says total potential HOD units including density bonus units, and the proposal is really, instead of doing it on a site-by-site basis, that it be included in the whole pool of 658 units. So if you could go through a scenario where we had 2 of our sites develop and they, 2 or 3 sites, and they maximized out and used the whole density bonus or the whole HOD pool of 658 units, at that point the HOD policy would no longer be in effect because it would have used all of those HOD and density bonus units.
Okay, so you're taking it out from the column header so it doesn't suggest that it's immutably applicable to each site.
Correct.
It's applicable on a gross. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And it's consistent with the way the density bonus policy was written for the tangent and mixed-use sites.
Yes, I remember the
Right.
figure.
Okay, I had questions from the commission. I had a couple of them. One is, could you describe what the situation would be in terms of the site inventory list if the Levine Bill AB 1537 requiring only 20 square acre is approved? How it changes this list, or does it change it very much? And you can describe it in more general terms, then.
So that the alternative 3 in the alternatives contemplates having the default density at 20 units an acre. By the legislation passing, it wouldn't, automatically affect something unless the county took further action. So the county would say, instead of identifying sites at 30 units an acre, we're going to identify sites at 20 units an acre. So as I said, the third alternative in the staff report contemplates
Which
that as an
doesn't
alternative.
simply change the sites nor the total units, as I recall.
Reduces it by 4.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's only 4 unit different or something like that, like 5% different if the bill is approved and signed by the governor.
That's correct, because most of our sites are, for lower income, we're not maximizing the potential that's currently allowed on each of those sites. So looking at the California Park, the Woodland and Auburn site, that site, although it allows 50 units under the HOD policy, we're not proposing that total development capacity be maximized. We're proposing 40 units.
So it wouldn't require a significant change, or it wouldn't result in a significant change in the allocation of the property. We wouldn't have to go out or we wouldn't have to remove any from the list. It basically doesn't affect us.
As proposed by, if the sites that were included were consistent with the staff proposal, that's true.
Okay. And my next question has to do with the market rate housing. I think I know the answer to this, but there are obviously a lot of additional properties in the county that are developable and that may certainly develop by 2023, the time frame, yet they're not shown on here. Is there a reason that we don't show, like the Hetfield property in Upper Lucas Valley? I mean, there's been talk of a plan and preliminary plan. Something may very well happen in that next 10 years, but there's no assumption regarding development on that property.
Right, the sites that were selected, the housing element requirement is just to show, here's the number of, here's the units you're required to plan for, and here is some zoning. We're actually not required to project every development, every site that has development potential. We really don't need to include all of those. It's difficult, another thing about the Hetfield property particularly is it wasn't included in the SEIR that was done, the environmental review that was done for the housing element in the previous cycle. And so we're recommending that we focus on the sites that were included in the environmental review to ensure that it's consistent with that.
But is it true that we're not obligated to actually even show where we're going to provide the market rate housing, even though we know that most what's built is going to be market rate housing?
That's true. There's different provisions that are required for lower income and moderate income housing and market rate housing. So market rate housing, you actually are not required to show your zoning capacity on a site-by-site basis. You just have to show it in overall zoning capacity. So we could have just listed some zones in the county that have additional development potential within that zoning district. Instead, we carried through the way we had done it previously in the previous housing element, where we actually showed our market rate housing on a site-by-site basis. But that is not actually required under housing element legislation. You're correct.
And then the question about the county has a requirement that for any project, 20% of the units have to be low or very low income. And on a lot of these properties, there's no assumption regarding lower income units being built. But in reality, according to our policies, if they were developed, any of them, like 217 Shoreline Highway, if that was built, 20% would have to be affordable, but we don't reflect that in this chart. Can you explain why?
Yeah, you're right. The county's inclusionary requirement is 20% of any developments over two or more are included, that 20% of those units be included, affordable to lower income households. However, under state housing element legislation, lower income housing sites have to be established through zoning, not through an inclusionary policy. So we need to show that for our lower income, to meet our lower income needs, we have to show it through zoning, either through the default density of 30 units an acre, or through a feasibility analysis, or through an active application.
So in fact, we will get units that it's kind of a numbers game in terms of state. They only count the 30 units per acre or more. When there are policies, we will get lower income units scattered more throughout the county, but the state doesn't allow us to count that until they're actually built.
That's correct. We count them. If one of these sites developed with inclusionary units on it, then when we submit our annual report to the state, we submit an annual report on housing production and housing element program implementation status, and that would include those units, and it would be reflected in our inventory in the future as units that were completed. So you can count them once they're completed, but you can't count them as in the inventory to project them in future development. That's okay.
And at this point, the final question I have is regarding the list of sites. And there are a couple sites that are very noticeable in their absence, one being Silveria St. Vincent's, where I do understand based on the last housing amount, the state would not accept it because it was not the likelihood. Actually, at that point, it didn't have the housing overlay zoning. And because of the history, it was not likely that it would happen by 2014, but now we're looking out to 2023. And that's a big site, and it has a big allocation of below market rate housing.
You're right. St. Vincent's, as you mentioned, has 221 units allocated to it in the countywide plan. 100 of those can be lower income units. And during the last housing element cycle, it was included with the affordable housing overlay designation that allowed those 100 units to be developed at 30 units an acre. However, when staff did this evaluation of sites, one of the things that we heard frequently, as I mentioned, was having this geographic disbursement of our housing sites and our affordable housing, to make sure that they were not all concentrated or included in one community. So as we did that evaluation, we found that Marinwood scored considerably higher and has an active application on it. And so therefore, staff is recommending that we include the Marinwood site and not include St. Vincent's. In addition, there are some concerns around the density bonus, how the state calculates the density bonus, and whether they would calculate, whether they would agree with how we have calculated the density bonus as being included in that 221.
Commissioner Holland?
What is the downside of not in the above market rate housing? What's the downside of not identifying the site specifically?
I don't know that there's any downside in it.
Well, we could maybe diffuse a lot of neighborhood concerns if we hadn't done that. We just said, in general.
For our market,
Accommodated.
that's possible. I haven't heard a lot of concerns about the market rate housing.
Well, I'm talking about,
So the moderate rate house, the moderate and the lower income, we do need to identify on a site-by-site
Oh, the
basis.
moderate you
The
do.
moderate we do,
Oh,
not
okay.
the market rate, not the above moderate.
oh, okay, I misunderstood.
Sorry.
Okay, any other questions? Then we will open the public hearing, and again, as I indicated, I attempted to go through and determine which of the cards are for representative groups. Our general practice is to allow a longer period of time, in this case 6 minutes, for representative groups. You don't have to take all the time. And if there are 2 representative groups, like I have a couple here, it would be up to you to decide how you want to split the time. Individuals, if there's a second member, you can speak actually as an individual under the 3-minute time limit. But I'll try to hold you to the time. We do have a lot of cards. It's going to be probably many hours worth of testimony here. We do want to give you all an opportunity to speak. So the first one, I'll announce 2 at a time. The first one is Christopher McManus, representing Fairfax for affordable housing, followed by Dennis Klein, actually I have 2 here, and Elizabeth Moody, representing Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee. I'll let you decide if you want to speak as a group. But if you want to come up to the microphone and be prepared, if I announce that you're going to be the next speaker, up to the microphone here.
Hello, my name is Christopher McManus. I'm speaking for Fairfax for affordable housing. We did try to implement a general plan. What occurred in Fairfax is that a petition was circulated in order to rescind the general plan, and especially it was targeting the housing element. At this point, as my daughter would say, we're in the weeds at this point. The latest ordinance, which was adopted about 3-4 days ago, was Ordinance 780, which is the ordinance to rescind the implementation of the general plan. And I thought it might be interesting to hear our experience in West Marin on the housing element, which is what is essentially being targeted. I live across the street from the Christ Lutheran Church, which is the project which sparked the controversy surrounding the housing element. It is a proposal called Peace Village, a proposal to rezone the site essentially for 40 units of senior housing on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard near White's Hill. This project became controversial. And what occurred was a former city councilman circulated a petition, which got 1,000 signatures. I would say that much of the information that was brought into the community was misrepresenting the general plan, misrepresenting the housing element. It was fear-mongering of the worst type, everything from crime to, you know, that the elderly residents would be dealing crack cocaine, that they would be breaking into buildings, that the elders would be driving down Sir Francis Drake and increasing traffic. You know, this type of thing. It was a fear-mongering that really didn't represent what was reality, because we have Bennett House. And Bennett House is right downtown, and there's really none of these problems that they have pointed out. There is a lot of misrepresentation and fear-mongering in this process, and there's a lot of threats of litigation. We have a group centered out of Sacramento called Pacific Legal Foundation, which represented Ken Lenny in his Supreme Court fight on a land use issue all the way to the Supreme Court. And that fight in West Marin polarized the community, and it also showed that there was essentially no holds barred, that there was no compromise, even though Senator Feinstein came in to create a compromise on a land use issue in West Marin. We have the U.S. Senator trying to settle these issues in West Marin, and it was no go. So I'm just pointing out our experience of polarization, our experience of misleading information, and I hope we don't see the same experience that we had in Fairfax at the county level. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to in any way try to limit what you speak, but if the speakers can kind of focus on what's before this commission, we would appreciate that. Your experience is helpful.
He has to split our time.
Well, you have less than 2 minutes left.
All right, sorry. Don't do that?
If you want to give your name.
All right, Wendy Callens, also Fairfax for Affordable Housing. And given the experience in Fairfax, one of the things that came out loud and clear is that they wanted to ensure that the housing that is built in town is indeed affordable. So I want to draw attention to one of the recommendations that is before you, which is the Marinwood Village. This is a development that is being put together by a nonprofit developer. 72 units of the 82 units are going to be guaranteed affordable. And so if we're looking for affordable housing in this county, this is a tremendous opportunity that should not be passed up for political reasons. I have many friends, not just in Fairfax, who are facing eviction right now. People whose rents have gone up $200, $300, $400, $500 in just a short period of time. Another group of residents in Larkspur who were told that they had to leave for renovations and they could come back if, you know, at a much higher rent. And then they were told, well, no, sorry, you don't have to leave yet because the owners had not actually gotten their permits. This is the kind of thing that is being faced by people in Marin right now. One of the things I don't know if I missed it in the report, but I know that one of the things in the report is about tenants' rights and rental control. I really want to hear more about that. We in Fairfax really want to hear more about that because that is something that we're looking into again as well. And I think it's important to do something that is immediate and can have immediate effect on people who are losing their homes right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Elizabeth Moody and Dennis Clark.
I'm Elizabeth Moody, and I have the same questions that Dickinson had about St. Vincent's, why it was dropped, and also I wonder why there's no place in Marin City. I also realize that we're only responsible for 185 units, which is ridiculous because more than something like 60% of our workers come from outside of the Lynn, which not only is very expensive for them in money for gas and time from their family, but also the climate change that it causes with all these cars coming into Marin County all the time. Most of our jobs are low income. And we should make more housing affordable to people.
Dennis Klein.
Dennis Klein, 347 Hazel Avenue, Mill Valley, California, representing the Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee. I'd like to start off by saying that if anyone here is interested in a plan which is not controversial in the city of Mill Valley, aimed at making the traffic on our main roads tenable again in exchange for mixed incomes, a bit more density, redeveloping our multiple family stock, and out of that getting the numbers needed to bring back local retail and house workforce in the town. We did all that. We're looking at East Blythedale going back to the 70s, where it never gummed up, and now it is. It starts coming up at 1:30 in the afternoon, and we're looking at a time where it's 24/7, you just sail to the highway. That would be the benefit, and also the congestion and the stuff being spewed into the air. And so with that, I'd like to say that I'm pretty proud of Mill Valley for what they've adopted. You need to look at how it's structured and all the myriad of policies and objectives that speak to the most contemporary and advanced thinking about transit-centric, pedestrian-friendly development. If anything, it could be a blueprint for the whole darn country. So it's not a whole lot going on. I know I'm in the business. Now, being in the business takes me to Washington, D.C. 3 to 4 times a year for the National Geospatial Advisory Committee meeting. I want to report that in April, I walked into the hall, and the whole room is about resiliency. And we need to keep the pain from getting really bad. And there's so much money to be made doing this. Why would we want to spend anything on the patient when we can make so much money off the pain? And I made a speech, a little speech. And when I came back in June, something had happened. The tone in the room had turned itself upside down, and now all they want to do is come up with ways that the federal government can show evidence they're serious about climate change reversal, which starts with every town and every county, every metro in this country changing the way we live together. Here's what I said in Washington, D.C. I said, it's March 20th, and I'm running in the Marin Headlands. That's the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. It's owned by everybody. And instead of it being draped in green majesty, it was nothing but a colorless cinder. And the rains were coming down, and I knew that the drought would be broken, but one thing I did not know, that normally there'd be 2 to 3 more storms this year. But instead, I was not sure that there was even one more drop. So we've already lost something we did not know we had to lose. Certainty that tomorrow will be somewhat like today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Lynn Kemeter from the Meadow Park Neighborhood Association, followed by Robert Tangoli, and then followed by Sharon Rusker.
Lynn Kemeter, Meadow Park Neighborhood Association Secretary. So we're talking about the Site 3 Woodland at Auburn Avenue. And we've had a lot of problems in our neighborhood. We've been working very closely with Katie Rice to clean the neighborhood up. Breathe deeply. Lily Thomas, you had mentioned the survey, the staff report proposal. I'm not aware of that. nor do I think any of the members are aware of that. So I would love to go online or find out how we can get that, because I'm not sure that it addresses all the problems that would occur if one were to build on Woodland and Auburn. First of all, at Bellum and Woodland, we have that 8-way traffic, and it's just a constant jam. It's a traffic nightmare. We have a freshwater marsh, and it would be detrimental to the wildlife in the marsh to build there or across the street from there. So we have environmental constraints. We are considered a wetland. We are considered a flood zone. I pay $1,700 a year for flood insurance, mandatory flood insurance. The geotechnical engineer calls us that we're on jello fill. So what I found in my yard recently was, with the Site 3, it states entitlement actions would include a county-initiated rezone and design review, which could be accomplished concurrently prior to the end of the planning period. Affordable housing is not subject to master plan or precise development plan requirements. So it seems like something could go on behind the scenes that would just make everything go through without the people's voice. So I'm wondering, first of all, if that would be a fair question. Can something go through without the people's voice?
No, if there's any project that would require a public notice and a public hearing.
And that would not be one where we would have to pay $450 to attend? Awesome.
I'm not going to attempt to answer questions, but that one was an easy one. But
Okay, good. Let's see. And lastly, I have for Commissioner Dixon, I have the I don't know why mine has the site number 5 for the St. Vincent Silveria on there. If you would like me to make a copy of it for you, I would be happy to do that, but it explains everything that somehow is not on your report.
Well, you're in the last housing element. You're the previous housing element.
Oh, okay, so this is the one, September 24th, so there's a new one out, you're saying?
And that's from 2007.
that's from the existing housing element, not the proposed one.
Thank you for the
Maybe
clarity.
you want to clarify?
I just wanted to say that all the information is available on the website. There's also some copies in the corner over there of the staff report.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. No, you're more than done.
The copies are available at the web address right there.
Web address. Thank you. And do you have anything to add, Craig?
Not really.
Okay, no. Thank you so much for your time, and we really hope that you consider and just really respect. We have this beautiful freshwater marsh. We would love to not have high-density housing in our backyard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next is Robert Pendoli representing Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative, followed by Sharon Rushton, followed by Bill Carney.
Good evening. Marin Environmental and Housing Collaborative is a partnership of affordable housing, environmental, and social justice advocates. Our purpose is to promote affordable housing, environmental integrity, and social justice. We're here to speak about 2 issues tonight. First is to urge you to follow the ambitious hearing schedule you set for yourself to ensure that it's possible for the Board of Supervisors to adopt the housing element by the January deadline. There are really important benefits to the whole community if this work can be done on time, and there are penalties that have dragged on. Second, we're here to support the Marinwood Village project and urge that you retain it on the list of sites for both lower income and market rate housing in the housing element. We have challenging criteria that we use to identify projects that we'll support. They have to have both outstanding environmental and affordability benefits before we'll get behind them. Marinwood Villages meets all of our criteria. First, it won't impact any valuable habitat. Second, it's an infill project. It's within walking distance of transit, jobs. It even has shopping on site. The type of overlay zone and the project that's being contemplated would provide additional retail shopping that's badly needed in the neighborhood. And finally, it exceeds the county's requirements for affordable lower income housing. we see a strong connection between affordability and environmental protection. And this connection goes to the heart of what we feel is the primary issue, the predominant issue of our times, climate change. As we know, in Marin, we have some of the most congested traffic in the region. Estimates vary. However, we believe the data that shows that 60% of the people whose jobs are located within the county commute from outside the county. Many of these in-commuters are lower income people who have to commute simply because they can't afford to live here. Marinwood Village would meet a part of that need. And it's the type of project that we need to reduce greenhouse gas generation. Finally, I'd like to speak about social equity. The lack of workforce housing in Marin County isn't just an unfortunate side effect of the economy. It's in large part a result of decisions that are made by town councils, city councils, and the Board of Supervisors. When they make planning decisions favoring low-density housing and retail development. These decisions have the very direct, if unintended, effect of excluding lower and moderate income households. This pattern can be reversed, and Marinwood Village is a good example of how it should be done. So in conclusion, two things. First, we recommend that you do adhere to your schedule and that you retain Marinwood Village. And my final point is I'd like to ask people who support Marinwood Village project that are here tonight to just briefly stand. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Sharon Ruskin, representing Sustainable Town Monty, followed by Joe Carney, followed by David Schoenbrunn.
Can all of you see the map? They went higher. Can you see it okay? Do you want us to move over there? Is this good? Okay. Good evening. I'm Sharon Rushton, Chairperson for Sustainable Town Monty. We urge you to follow the recommendations expressed in the Sustainable Town Monty letters regarding the housing element, and urge you to remove the Tam Junction sites from the housing elements inventory, revise the site evaluation criteria chart, and direct staff to conduct a compelling feasibility analysis. The Tam Junction sites are subject to hazardous traffic congestion, unsafe, toxic air contaminants, high seismic activity, high liquefaction, subsidence, mud displacement, hazardous materials, frequent flooding. Every single site is within the 100-year floodplain, and sea level rise, which, as you can see by this BCDC map, every single Tam Junction site will be underwater with sea level rise. Expert evidence from environmental attorneys, technical experts, and environmental impact reports demonstrate that development at the Tam Junction sites would exacerbate the existing dangerous conditions and add new, significant adverse environmental impacts. This would increase the risk of harm to the environment and jeopardize public health and safety. Moreover, the extraordinarily high number of hazards and adverse impacts at the sites magnifies the multiple mitigations that a developer would need to fulfill, and therefore would cause development costs to soar. These factors make the Tam Junction sites inappropriate for housing. Furthermore, the current high-density zoning at the Tam Junction sites is inappropriate. So even though you're only counting 10 units, for instance, at the Armstrong site for the RENA allocation, that site is zoned for 20 units per acre, which would allow up to 27 units per acre with a state density bonus law. So we're looking at 35 to 43, if I've got the calculation right, units at that site. And that's what a developer would probably pursue, especially when it's so expensive to develop at the sites. At the Chevron site, that's zoned at 30 units per acre, with a state density bonus of 35%, that would go up to 40 units per acre. This is what we believe the developers will try to pursue. And the point that I want to make is if the sites remain in the housing element, this inappropriate zoning would be locked in place until 2023. This must be rectified. Once again, we urge you to remove the Tam Junction sites from the housing elements inventory. And as you're well aware, the last housing element had a RENA allocation of 773 units. The current housing element RENA allocation is 185 units. It is significantly lowered. We are very certain that staff would be able to find other sites from the previous list that was used in the previous housing element. If you're only counting 20 units at the Tam Junction sites towards the RENA allocation, I'm sure that from the list of sites that were used in the last housing element, you would be able to find sites that could accommodate 20 units, or 23 with the one site that is just already permitted for 3 units. In addition, the county's site evaluation criteria chart is confusing. It weights criteria inappropriately, lacks important criteria, and describes criteria at the Tam Junction sites incorrectly, as demonstrated in our letter. Amazingly, sea level rise is weighted at only 1/7 of a point. As a result, the chart obfuscates the true conditions at the Tam Junction sites. This chart is flawed and must be revised. Lastly, we urge staff to conduct a thorough and compelling feasibility analysis to lower residential densities. This will help to lower environmental impacts, uphold the traditional character of Marin neighborhoods, and increase the probability that housing will be built, considering the extreme opposition to high-density housing in this county. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, Bill Carney, representing Sustainable Marin, followed by David Schoenbrunn, followed by Robin Mizell.
Good evening. I also wanted to mention that in addition to the Sustainable Marin hat that I'm wearing tonight, I'm also a member of a group called CALM, Coalition for a Livable Marin. So let's talk about the character of Marin. It's a character that's rooted in the open character of our land that we've so carefully maintained and preserved, particularly over the last number of decades. It's also rooted in the compact character of our traditional neighborhoods and town centers, built within walking distance of our early transit, which of course took the form of trains. I would also say that it's rooted in the open character of those towns socially, where we can walk together, we can talk together, and come to value the diversity of our neighbors just as we value the diversity of our natural communities. So what's the biggest threat to the character of Marin's open landscapes and compact towns? It's a continued sprawl of single-family homes. Marin does not need more single-family houses. That's clear from the physical and traffic impacts of sprawl that we already see. It's clear from the climate impacts of sprawling housing that require people to drive, emitting the carbon pollution that causes climate change. And it's certainly clear from the affordability numbers in the report that you're reviewing tonight. What's also clear from these numbers is that Marin needs more apartments and more townhouses located within easy walking distance of shopping and of transit. You have a number of sites and strategies for such housing in the housing element information that's before you today, none of which seem to require changes to existing zoning, and some of which, like Marinwood, have active proposals for affordable housing, so we can see exactly how they fit into the character of our county. I urge your favorable consideration of the housing element moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. David Schumbrun representing Trans Staff, followed by Robin Mizell, and then Rolly Apps, I believe.
David Schumbrun, what he said, I thought Mr. Carney expressed himself very well. I'm president of TransDef. We are advocates for the regional planning of transportation, land use, and air quality. Our focus on climate change has led us to be litigating a case right now with the State Air Resources Board. The everyday needs of existing Marin residents creates a demand for retail and service workers. We recognize that large flows of in-commuting workers are unsustainable, not only from an environmental perspective, but also from a social perspective. The lack of income diversity in this county is harmful to the social fabric. We're concerned about the divisiveness and rancor of the current backlash movement that opposes housing, and thought it important to come out and speak before you today. We support the staff recommended draft housing element and congratulate them on their excellent work. We support the proposed policy recommendations requiring multifamily housing in multifamily zones, studying residential density equivalence. This, by the way, is very important in avoiding projects like WinCup, which are massive, not because of the unit count, but because the units themselves are huge. So this provides a method of moving towards smaller units which are inherently more affordable. Socioeconomic analysis will provide useful information that will be helpful in working through controversial projects where there are complaints about school fees, etc., that need to be resolved. The tenant protections that are discussed would be incredibly helpful in reducing housing insecurity. And finally, the functioning of the housing overlay zone is definitely needed. The study of it is definitely needed. The speaker from Tam Valley before me mentioned the zoning being locked in until 2023. I'm sure she knows very well that the housing element is a completely different process from the zoning determinations, and any issues having to do with changing zonings happens in different sets of hearings. So I think it's important for people to understand how this all works. I'd like to close by speaking in favor of the Marinwood site. We recognize how difficult it is to create affordable housing for families. This site ranks especially high in the evaluation process, and the plan is the result of a multi-year consensus building process. Please include it in your list. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Robin Mizell, representing the Marin Organizing Committee.
And Alyssa Ralston is also representing the Marin
Okay,
Organizing
you
Committee.
can
We'll
divide
share
your-
the time.
Okay, I'm not going to start yet, but let me just say that at this point I only have 2 additional cards for representatives of organizations. I know there are other groups. I do have yours. And I know there are other people from organizations. If you want to speak, I don't believe I have a card from you, but if you just want to start moving over this direction. And again, these are people who are speaking as a representative, not just a member, but a representative of an organization. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Alyssa Ralston, and Robin and I are representing the Marin Organizing Committee, which is a consortium of 20 faith community and nonprofit organizations working together for the common good. First of all, we'd like to very much thank the staff and the commission for all the hard work they've put into this element. Marin Organizing Committee recognizes the need for affordable multi-unit housing and see this as a solution to helping individuals and families in need of such housing to live with dignity. There have been too many stories of hardworking people couch surfing or commuting long hours on our overcrowded freeway. Marin Organizing Committee believes that the Marinwood project will enable more people who currently live outside of Marin but work in Marin to drive fewer miles and reduce traffic on 101. Bridge Housing has an excellent of building quality, affordable housing, and we believe that this particular development will enhance our community and help us all. We're in support of this project and hope that all of the work over the past 8 to 10 years to develop this plan will not go to waste, and that we will go forward and develop this. We're in total support of Meg's statement earlier and hope that you will go forward with the Marinwood project.
Not building the Marinwood project would send the absolute wrong message to the citizens of Marin County. We need affordable housing, like Bill Carney stated from COM, Bob Pendley from Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative, and that's how the Marin Organizing Committee members feel as well. It's just the beginning of ensuring that our teachers and our police and other workforce people can afford to live in Marin. Just the beginning. But it would be sending the wrong message not to do it. Thank you.
Okay, Rolly Katz, representing Marin Association of Public Employees, followed by Stephen Nestle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Raleigh Katz, Marin Association of Public Employees. We are the largest union of Marin County employees, representing rank and file workers such as office assistants, secretaries, park rangers, road maintenance crews, custodians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Many people who sadly cannot afford to live in the community where they work. We have a member, just hypothetically, not hypothetically, real case, who makes net take-home pay is about $3,400 a month. Not unusual at all. Now paying $1,700 a month for a two-bedroom apartment in Larkspur. The people who need the housing that you are addressing, this housing element, are the people who work every day in this county, whether they work for this county, serving the citizens of this county, whether they work for a grocery store, a hospital, you name it. Those people who live in this, work in this community need to be able to afford to live in this community. There are concerns about traffic. I see on the back of some t-shirts. People who have to live outside of this county have to drive more, as many have pointed out, meaning there is more traffic. And you've already heard many people say very eloquently about the effects on climate change and air pollution in general. So we as an organization of working people who work for the citizens of this community urge your moving forward with this plan so that we can move forward and have housing that our people can afford to live in. Thank you.
Next, Stephen Nestle, representing Save Marinwood, followed by Riley Hurd.
Yes, I just wanted to say hi again. It's been a long time since we've seen you. I know you've been working hard all year, even though I don't think I agree with much of what you've decided, certainly in the last housing element. I appreciate your service, and I think it's good that we recognize you for your efforts. And I want to start out on a positive note because I have been talking to people in Marinwood for the last couple of years. We started with a handful of us, and now countywide, there's more than 10,000 people that have signed petitions, have gone to the ballot box, have changed the course of politics. And the reason why is they don't like the direction of what's going on in this county, and they hope to rectify it through the democratic process. But there are some things we can all agree on, and I hope everybody listens to this one thing. If you don't hear anything else I say, we all agree affordable housing is needed in Marin. Does anyone disagree with that? Just show your hand. Not a single person. We all love Marin. We're all concerned about water, traffic, schools, taxes, pensions. And our big concern is that low-income people are really having it tough in this town. We're also concerned about the data being used to present these arguments for affordable housing. Do you know the average income in San Rafael, the average household income, falls below the low-income classification by the county? I believe it's 88.5 for low income in the county. But actually in San Rafael, according to census data, in